这进步做的你们讲做的没那么进步，俺觉得那个当工咱都是么多，东北推荐讲那个香菜儿，那正是我在你讲工作叫我推荐上了一来。人们本做着老所让的，我就多半跑了心机了。
The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in billions of aeons. I now see it here, receive it and uphold it, about to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning, to liberate all beings, thus generate the supreme bodhicitta. Now let's continue with the Surangama Sutra. The Surangama Sutra.
这个楞严经呢，我们前面已经讲了4种。
In the previous classes, we've already covered the 5 types of pointing out of the 10. For example, seeing is mind. The seeing does not move, seeing does not change, seeing does not lost, and seeing does not return. So we've already covered the 5 out of 10. Now today we're going to talk about that seeing does not intermingle.
那么我们讲这个楞严经的话呢
When we're looking at the Surangama Sutra,
简单的地方呢讲多一点，但是到目前
initially I wanted to talk a bit more when we are looking at some of the simple places, but so far we haven't really encountered any place that's very simple nor too difficult. But let's go through this particular teaching with the commentaries according to the previous great masters as well as the analysis given by the wise ones. So today we're going to talk about seeing does not intermingle. Previously we also covered this part a bit, but I would like to just repeat this. The Surangama Sutra, in fact, is a teaching that's given by the Buddha to Ananda on the nature of mind. It's quite a supreme Dharma teaching. That is why the Surangama Sutra was placed as a great importance for by the Chan Buddhism as well as Tiantai Buddhism and many other schools. Within this whole Surangama Sutra, there are only 2 chapters that's included in the Digger version of the Tripitaka, and for that I have received the oral transmission. Other than that, the translation by Chankya Rupi Dorje, there is no oral transmission for that version. In the Tripitakas, out of the 2 great Tripitakas, the Beijing version as well as this Tibetan version, and around Lhasa there's another version of the Tripitaka, but not sure if the other 2 versions, whether there are oral transmissions associated with those 2 versions or not. The version that's translated by Chankya Rupi Dorje was translated from the Chinese language. Not sure if there are oral transmissions given in Chinese before, so or if there's a tradition of giving oral transmissions. If not, or if there's so, had one, not sure if Chankya Rupi Dorje had given that before. Anyhow, this particular time I noticed that majority of you are quite diligent in the studying of it, and I really hope that whenever and whatever studies, whatever sutras you're studying, I really wish that you can delve into the depth of it, pay great attention, because I had this regret that when I was listening to teachings from Pontsuk Rinpoche, though I took many classes, also I had to give teachings and mentoring classes at that time. So most of the teachings I would take notes and listen to the oral transmission. But other than that, I never really compared to the other commentaries, and for that I feel quite regretful. Therefore, I hope that whenever you have opportunity, try to delve into the depth of the teaching whenever you can. And this year, the teachings we're going to study is the treasury of the wish fulfilling treasury, as well as the Surangama Sutra and the 37 stanzas of Bodhisattva. Let's continue with the direct pointing out that's given by the Buddha to Ananda. Ananda said that I recognize that all seeing nature does not return to anything, but how can I come to know that it is my true nature? Previously, we've already talked about how darkness would return to darkness, and brightness will return to emptiness, and blockage will return to the walls and various obstacles. So the 8 types of returning, they would return to the nature of it. But because the seeing nature does not return to anything, because seeing the seeing nature is already seeing the true nature. Since it is a true mind, then there is nowhere to return. So that's the teaching that's given from last class. And Ananda says that, well, I recognize that seeing nature does not return to anything, but how can I come to know that it is my true nature? Ananda said that, okay, I understand that the seeing nature does not return to anything, but then how about my true nature? How do I know this is the true nature? It seems that Ananda is very confused on each of the questions, because on one hand, he has lots of dualistic thoughts, lots of conceptual obscurations, but on the other, he has lots of faith to the Buddha, so he really wants to attain liberation. But he couldn't find the correct perspective to enter into that level of realization. And now he's just very confused on how can I see the nature? Is there really something there that's called the true nature? And then the Buddha addressed to Ananda by saying that, now I have a question for you. At this point, you have not yet attained the purity of no outflows. Blessed by the Buddha's spiritual strength, you're able to see into the first dhyana heavens without any obscuration. The Buddha over here then addressed the question from Ananda by saying that, well, now, though you have not attained the full arhathood, and you have not attained the pure eye, the pure wisdom eye. If you remember, Ananda only attained the arhathood after Buddha passed into parinirvana. But the Buddha over here says that blessed by the Buddha's spiritual strength, you are able to see into the first dhyana heavens, the first dhyana heavens out of the 4 dhyanas. And some of the teachings says the first dhyana heavens refers to the dhyana formation, the first dhyana formation, without any obscuration. In this way, you are able to see into the four great continents without any obscurations. Therefore, we can see that through the wisdom of Ananda, he could perceive everything. In the 1,001 small fold of 1,000 world. And then the Buddha says that just as Aniruddha looks at Jambudvipa with such clarity as he might an amala fruit in the palm of his hand. Since Aniruddha is the foremost disciple who can who has the divine eye and can perceive the 3,000-fold world just as how he sees the mango fruit in the palm of a hand. And what did Ananda see? And Ananda could perceive Jambudvipa. In fact, over here, the Jambudvipa doesn't mean that it's just the Jambudvipa continent that we live in. Rather, it's a 3,000-fold world. That teaching is given in the Vimalakirti Sutra as well. Aniruddha, after seeing the 3,000-fold world, he could see it just like how the mango fruit is in his hand, in his palm. Everything is completely clear and completely see-through. So as an arhat, he could perceive the 3,000-fold world like such. This is Aniruddha, the Venerable Aniruddha, who is the foremost in the divine eye out of all the assemblies and the disciples of the Buddha. The bodhisattvas can see hundreds of thousands of realms. The thus come ones of the 10 directions, let it be from whichever directions that they are from, they would be able to see everything throughout the Pure Lands as numerous as fine motes of dust. Whomsoever this thus come ones is, they would be able to see all the Pure Lands of all the directions until the end of the numbers. They would be able to see all of that. According to Madhyamika-avatara, it states the differences of the merits of the bodhisattvas all the way between the first to the 7th bhumi and 7th bhumi to the 10th bhumi and then the full enlightenment of Buddhahood. And it says that all the Pure Lands, as tiny as the motes of dust, as numerous as the motes of dust, the Buddhas would be able to perceive them without exception. That's the wisdom of the Buddha. Indeed, completely unfathomable. But living beings, the mundane being sides, are completely different than those who have attained any levels of realization. The mundane being sight does not extend beyond a fraction of an inch. So narrow, very short-sighted. According to Master Changshui's commentary, it says that the mundane being's vision can be covered by a piece of paper. And the sentient being's perception of the external world can be covered by a piece of paper. The mundane being's observation of one's own body can be covered by a layer of skin. So that's how short-sighted we are as mundane beings. Therefore, as mundane beings, we shouldn't think that our wisdom is so sharp and we're so great, we're so wonderful, and feel very proud of ourselves. And because we're so short-sighted and so narrow in our perception, we should be aware that whatever we see are not reliable. For example, we can't even remember what happened yesterday, not clearly at least. Let's not even talk about what happened across the mountains, but even if there's only one wall in between us, we have no idea what happened over there. A verse that we remembered yesterday, and then we would forget about it today. So all of these kinds of phenomena that happens to us further proves that our understanding and our view and our insights are very limited. Therefore, over here the Buddha gives the 5 types of comparisons: Ananda, Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha, as well as a mundane being. Each different one with a different level of realization can see different perceptions. So their perceptions are different. And then the Buddha continued to tell Ananda by saying that Ananda, as you and I now look at the palace where the 4 heavenly kings reside, and inspect all that moves in the water, on dry land, and in the air. The Buddha said that, okay, let's go and take a visit to the 4 heavenly kings' palace. Let's take a tour. Just like how the Buddha sometimes would take certain disciples to see the celestial realm or to the hell realm through his miraculous powers. Therefore, over here, the Buddha took Ananda to the 4 heavenly kings' palace.
还有这个中间的话呢，就是有这个诸变的这些就观看吧，就是去观看的过程当中，就是在哪里
Throughout this tour,
就江河啊，就是还有这个陆地啊。
On the way, they saw rivers and they saw land as well as in the air.
在这个空中应该依靠神通力去的话，那就是它可能也有一个，就是相当于说我们现在的航线一样，有一些就空性的地方。
As they travel there through miraculous power, so the way they travel to the heavenly realm, the heavenly king's palace probably also takes a route in the air. So particularly says that the air commute path. At that time, you'll be able to see all kinds of appearances. Some are dark and some are bright, varying in shape and appearance. Just like whenever we would travel with our gurus, on the way you see all kinds of happiness and suffering, dark and light, and all kinds of plays and all kinds of drama, all kinds of displays of various manifestations. So they're simply just appearances. The 6 defilements or 6 objects, the form, sound, touch, smell, taste. While there are the perceptions of that, yet all are nothing but dust before us, the 6 kinds of dusts, distinctions and obstructions. After taking Ananda to the 4 heavenly kings and then returned, maybe they've seen many things. For example, some of the heavenly kings could be very wealthy and then could see a rich variety of manifestations. But after all, they're simply just appearances, just manifestations, just an illusion. They simply left some marks in the mind consciousness, but other than that, there's nothing else. Just as how some gurus, when they give pointing out instructions to the disciple. They would ask the disciples to take a look at the world or take a tour on the outside, look at certain kinds of phenomena, and after that, then the guru would give the instruction. Just like that, Ananda was told by the Buddha by saying that among them you should distinguish which is self and which is other. The self and other doesn't mean oneself versus other sentient beings, doesn't mean that. Rather, it means the self and other in terms of the nature of mind. The seeing nature is your own or of the others. I ask you now to select from within your seeing which is the substance of the self and which is the appearance of things, asked by the Buddha. So the Buddha is saying that, well, I can help you to make the analysis and help you to distinct the viewing or the seeing. Because previously Ananda keep on saying, what's the nature of seeing? Is the nature of seeing like this or is the nature of seeing like that? Over here, some of our fellow practitioners, they're very smart, but some are not that smart. They would come up with all kinds of questions. And the Dharma books are very crumbly, and they try their best, which is really wonderful. Ananda, I think, is similar to that type of practitioner who's trying very hard. We can see this particular scene is quite vivid, just like a movie. It would be really wonderful if the Surangama Sutra can be made into a movie. I haven't seen one like that yet. Anyhow, over here, the Buddha asked, what is the self and what is the appearance of things? So the Buddha asked this particular question, the seeing of nature, is it you or is it of others? We often would talk about that as well. The seeing of nature, is it of a self or is it of something other? And then the Buddha said that, okay, let me help you. Since I've taken you to on the tour to the 4 heavenly kings, and then you must be tired, but let me help you to make the analysis of whether your seeing of the nature is in yourself or in the others. That's the main thing to be decided today. Let's look at the analysis. The Buddha continued to ask Ananda. Today, Ananda didn't really reply anything, but the Buddha keep on giving questions. Sometimes Ananda would cry, sometimes he would laugh. I'm not sure what's Ananda's expression at this point through today's teaching. The Buddha said that, Ananda, if you take a good look at everything everywhere within the range of your vision, extending from the palace of the sun and moon to the 7 gold mountain ranges. So Buddha told Ananda, saying that, well, you should try all your best to seek for the source of your seeing. It could be from the 4 heavenly kings' palace of the sun and moon. Look at the palace of sun and palace of moon. Are they of external existence or not? The sun and the moon are the external phenomena, but they're not you. In this part, it points out that his seeing nature is not external. It is of his own mind. The mountains are not his mind. In the wish-fulfilling treasury, it says that the manifestation or the appearance, the object that's appearing in the object phenomena is not your mind. However, the manifestation is your mind.
那细细观察的时候呢，就是有这个随种种
Over here says that
业无废如，就是那么起到这个
all the
金山当中
manifested
的周围的这些
phenomena
我们也
are
去观察的
external.
时
They're
候呢，
not your
有种
nature
种
of
的这种
seeing.
光线
This
就
is
是
the same
这个
thing.
五颜六色或者
And then the
说是
Buddha
斑斓
continued to
色彩
say,
就是
now
各
look
种
at
各样
those 7
但是这些
golden
呢，就是
mountain
是这个外
ranges.
部就不是你的见解就不是你的见性就不是你的
Whenever
见
we
性
see all kinds of colors,
然
all
后渐
kinds
渐的
of
就是再去观察
lights,
刚才就是说是这
a
些的话呢
variety
什么太阳
and
和
myriads
什么
of
这个月亮这些的话呢，就是
manifestations.
上等者的这个就是这个
Those
背景
are
就是然后呢
external. Those are
就是
external
什么其
phenomena.
上这些
Those
是
are
中
not
等
your
者
seeing
下
nature.
面的这些呢就是下等者的，有些也有这样的这个分那个上中下的
Some
这个分析
commentaries
方法
said that the
然后渐渐的
sun
再去
and
观察的
moon
话呢，就
are
是
the
包括这
object
个
of
时间当中
the
的这种云腾
of the
还有这个
superior
鸟类的飞
capacities,
翔
and
就
the
是
seven
风的那
mountains are
种
of
这
the
个吹
middling,
动
and
然后
the
围成的
ones
这个
that's
就
given
是这
below
种
are
气
of
雾
the
阳光
inferior.
还有呢就是树木山
Or
川
some said that
然后
it's
这个
by
草就是草
the
节草木还有人和动物等
observation
等
from
这些的话
high to
呢
low.
都是这个
Now the next
显无
part
废
talks
物
about
就是那么这些呢
at
也是
closer
全
range,
部
you
呢
will
就是外面的这个
gradually
外
see
部
clouds
而不是呢
floating,
就
birds
是你
flying,
所以
wind
这一
blowing,
段当
dust
中的话
rising,
呢
trees,
那么
plants,
就是
rivers,
不管是
mountains,
天界
grasses,
当中的
animals,
也好或者是
people,
我
all
们
of
人世间
which
的
are not
所
you
有的
but
这个
things.
山河大地就种种包括这个
So
人
all
和
of
动物
those
等等
manifestations,
这些现象的话呢
all of those
是应该是
appearances,
外在的这
in
个
fact,
事物
they
而不
are
是呢
of
就是
the
内在的这个
external
就是见解
phenomena.
所以
They are
我
not
想
your
这个呢
nature
应
of
该是
seeing.
从这个
This
渐进
particular
就是从
part
那个
specifically
就是
points
显
out
现的这个外
all
境
the
方面来讲的
appearing
这个是应该是它有思
phenomena.
想的一种这个外物吧
They are the
那
external
么下
phenomena
面的
that
话呢
has
就是
their
这一
own
段的话呢就是那个
characteristics.
显现就是从显现方面讲的然后佛陀呢就是
So
进一
this
步
part
的
talks
就因为
about
上面的这些
the
的话呢就是实际上是这个外面的物呢
external
就是不是
objects,
见
the
就是这个
external
意思
phenomena,
然后
which
下
means
面的
the
这一
external
段的话呢
phenomena
就是
are
见
not
呢就是不是
seeing.
物好
The
像那
next
个
part
就
is
是
the
见就是
seeing
不是物
is
就是
not
主要讲这个道理
objects.
那下面就是又继续就是
Now the
说
Buddha
就是
continued,
阿难就是说
Ananda,
施
all
诸
things,
经言诸
near and
如
far, have the nature of
物
things.
性随
Although
福
each
差
is distinctly
随福
different, they
就
are
是
seen with the
有
same
这
pure
个
essence of
差
seeing.
数同如
Thus,
渐进
all the categories of
清
things
净
have
所
their
住
individual
则主
distinctions,
物类
but the
自
seeing
有差
nature
别
has
见
no
性无
differences.
就是
This
体现
essential,
性无
wonderful brightness is the most
他说阿
certainly
难
your
就是你
seeing
现在这
nature.
个就是看到的就是
So
很
he said
远的
that
地方很
Ananda,
近的地
now
方的各
whatever
种
you
各样
see,
的
let
这
it be
些这
near
个
or far,
事物就是
all
包括
kinds
山
of
河大
things,
地也好就是
the
什么这
mountains,
个
rivers, or
逆境
the
逆境
sentient
众生也
beings.
好就是这些的话呢就种种的这个差别
There are
就
lots
是
of
就是外面
differences.
就是见的是种种的这个差别
You can
就是
see
各
a
种各样
variety
的
of
这个
things,
千子万态千子万状就是各种
the
就
myriads
是各种
kinds
各
of
样的但是这些的
objects.
话呢就是通如渐进就是全部呢
However,
就常常的是就是在
they are
你的这个
seen with the
见当
same
中见
pure
性当中呢
essence
就
of
是
seeing.
同意的就是你看这里呢虽然有外面就是种种现象就是山河
Though
大
that
地等等的
everything on the
但是这
outside,
个呢
they can
从
have
这个你的
myriads
见的角
kinds
度来
of
讲的话呢
forms
就是
and
跟你的
shapes
这个
and
见
all
呢
of that,
就
but
是这个
the
同
essence
就
of
是同
seeing
如逆见就是全是在你的
are
见解
not
上呢就
different.
是没有这个什么分开的情境所住则诸物类就是所有的这些这个情境的这个所住
Thus,
的
all
话
the
呢
categories
都
of
是
things
各种各
have
样
their
的这个物
individual
类但是
distinctions,
此境呢就是有
but the
差别
seeing
见性
nature
呢
has
就是
no
没有差
differences.
别就是此境妙
This
妙明
essential, wonderful
诚如
brightness
见
is
性
most
那么
certainly your
这
seeing
个光
nature.
明
So
美
this
妙
kind of
稀有的
brightness,
这种
this
见解的话实际
wonderful
上是
and
就是你的
rare
见性就在这里的话
essence
呢
is your
就
seeing.
把这个外面的就种种这个差别的就是
All kinds of
就
distinctions
是
on
各
the
种这个
external
现象的
phenomena,
包罗万象的就是千姿百
the
态的各
myriads
种这
kinds
个
of
现象的话呢
phenomena.
实际上是从外境的现象上面来讲呢就是多种多
In
样的
terms of the
但是
external
从你的这个见
manifestations,
解层
yes,
面来
there
讲的话呢
are
就是虽然有差别但是
a
最终的
range
话呢
of
就是你的这
varieties.
个见解上
However,
呢
from
就是没
the
有什么这个
level
差
of
别的这
the
就是见性
essence of
所以
your
这个呢
seeing,
我觉
there
得
is
是
no difference.
无光尊者呢就是说是
Lung
这
Chenpa
个
said that
先现就是先现是境，先境是这个不是性嘛，就是所以这
The
个是从
manifest
先现的角
the
度来讲的话呢，那外面的就各种各样的这
manifested
种现象的话呢，其
objects
实
are
是
phenomena,
当时
but
他
the
见证的
phenomena
这种
is
这
not
个
mind.
智慧面前就是现象而已，就是
There are
除
all
此之外
kinds
的
of
话呢，就是没有一个
manifestations on the outside.
实有的
However,
这个洞悉，就是
they
应
are
该在这
simply
里
the
呢，就
manifestations
是要
that's
明白就是
perceived
这个
by
道
the
理。
perceiver's wisdom. Other than that,
然
there
后
are
的话
no
呢，就是下面呢，就
intrinsically
是这个有个
existent
辩论
things
分析啊，
that's
这个
existent
是
on the
大家可能
outside.
要
The next part we need
要
to
注意一
pay
下，不
close
然的话
attention.
也许可能要开始坐飞机了，就
Otherwise,
是
I
刚才
think you
坐
might
火
get
车，
very
就是现在就
confused.
开始
The
坐
previous
飞机的
part,
话呢，
you
有
probably
点
got a little
今天我也
confused,
讲得不是很
and then
快，
the
因为
next part
不太
would
舒服。
be very confusing if you don't pay attention. I'm not feeling too well today. Maybe I'm not giving a very good explanation.
下面开始要讲啊，就是我大概先就是自己先不看
Let me
书，
try
就是讲
to
一下啊，
give you
就
the
是下面的
teaching
字要
on my
讲那
own
个
without
见
the
啊，就是
book.
这个见的话呢，就
Now
是
let's
这个
look
阿
at
难
the
尊者这
seeing.
边就是他的这个见呢，就是他很想知道
Ananda
就是自己
really
的
wants
这
to
个见
know
性就是到底是什么样嘛。但是
the
佛陀的话呢，就
the
是
nature
通
of
过一些
seeing.
辩论，
And
或
then
者
the
是通过
Buddha,
一些给他
through
就
debates,
是做一
through
些这个
examples,
用
through
一些比喻啊，就是或者
analysis
说是用一些道理来，就是给他就是指指。
to
过程当
give
中呢，就是给
Ananda
阿
the
难就是
pointing out.
说主要这个
Throughout
说
the
明呢，就是
pointing
我们
out,
这一段当中的话呢，主要说
he
明
wanted
我们的这
to
个见呢，
teach
见性的话
Ananda
呢，就是
that
没有
the
这个外
seeing
面的一
nature
个外物，
doesn't
啊
have
就是没有
anything
外物，
that's
就是这个是
existent
最
on the
关键的，就是
outside.
见性
This
是
is
没
the
有外
crucial
物的。
point.
那见性怎么没有外物
Seeing
呢？
is
就是
not
见
a
性是如果
thing
是
that's
有外物
existent
的
on
话
the
呢，
outside.
就是
That's
就是
the
你
key
觉得
point
是
here.
就是见性呢，
And then the
如果是
Buddha over
真正
here
是有
says
外物
that
的
if
话呢，
seeing
那
were
么
a
就
thing,
是
then you should
说是
also be
我的
able to
这
see
个
my
见
seeing.
呢，就是我的见解的话呢，就是你也应该有这个见到的，因为有外物的话呢，就是佛陀肯定有
Because
这
if
个
seeing
见到
were
的。
to
那么
be a
这样的
seeing,
话呢，
to be
就
a
是你
thing,
阿难
then
就
you
是
should
真
be
的
able to
有
see
这
it
个
as
觉得
well,
是
even if it's
这
the
个
Buddha's
见性
seeing.
是有就是这个外物啊，就是一个外物的话呢，那么你应该要见到，就是我的这个见呢，就是我的这个见，为什么呢？因为见有外物的话，那就是那我的
Because
这
if
个
a
见呢，
seeing is a
就是
thing
也有外物，就是
that's
那这样的话呢，
existent,
那
then
就
my
是
seeing or the Buddha's
就
seeing
像
would
这个你有
have
眼
a
根的话
thing
呢，
that's
我这边有
existent
瓶
on
子
the
呢，你
outside.
为什么这个
You should
见
be
不
able to
到
see it,
啊？就
just
是
as,
这也是
for
我们这
example,
个共
a
同之见，就
vase.
是这个
If you can see the
这是
vase,
第一个啊，
and if
就
the
那
seeing
我
is
就
just
直接
like the
讲吧。
vase, then you
若
should be,
若
the
见
other
事物
people
啊，
should be able
若
to
见
see
事
the
物自
seeing,
如
just like how they
也
would be
亦
able to see
可
the
见
vase.
物之见啊，就是佛陀
That
就
is
是
why the Buddha
告
said
诉
that
这
if
个阿
seeing
难
were
的
a
话呢，就是
thing,
这个见
then
呢，
you
就
should be
是
able
见
to
性呢，
see
就是没
my
有这个外
seeing.
物的。就是其实见性是什么
He's
样
trying
的？
to
就是
tell
大家我们前面也是在
Ananda
见
that
性就是这样的，
the
讲了
nature
很
of
多，
seeing
就是真
doesn't,
正的这个见
or
性
it
的
is
话呢，
not an
其
object
实
to be seen.
人识到
It
自
is
己
not a
性的本
thing
来
to
面
be
目呢，
seen.
就是这个叫做是
And
这
the
个
nature
见
of
啊。
seeing,
但是这个
in
如
fact,
果从
refers
严格来
to the
讲的话
nature
呢，就
of
是它
one's
没有
mind.
能
This
见，
is
也没有
seeing.
这个所见啊，就能见所见是它是二趣这个所色的。
But the seeing doesn't
远离
have
了
a
二趣的，就
perceiver
是这
or
样
the
的。聊到
perceived,
这个性
because
的
a
本性呢，
perceiver
就
and a
是实际上
perceived
是
still
见，
is
就是
very
它
much
可以
based
说
on
是
the
很长的，就是它
dualistic
呢，
perception.
就是也不以任
However,
何的
this
这种这
seeing
个
is
法，
beyond
甚
the
至这个众
dualistic
生道来自
perception
如来之
to
间
see
的
the
话呢，这个
nature
见
of
是无
one's
所不
mind.
见的。
In
我们
fact,
要
this
懂到
seeing
这个
is constant.
见的这
It
种
is
见
permanent.
性的
It
时
is
候呢，
not
就是这对你
reliant
说
on
出这个
anything
比较
else.
比较容易，就是否则
This
的话呢，我
seeing
们一
is
般的
without
这个文字上
increase
看的
nor
话，可
decrease.
能有时候呢，就是好像这个似懂非懂的，就
It
是所以
seems that it's
这
a
个
bit
阿难
difficult
呢，
to
就是很
understand
想知
it,
道这个见到底
especially
是怎么
from
样的。但
the
是
level
我们有
of
些人呢，就是见到
wording.
见到了这个本性，见到本性的话呢，好像这个本性呢，
Ananda
就是
over
他就
here
觉得是
really
有一
wants to
种外
know
面的一
what
个
this
东西，
seeing
就是那么
is.
我就去
Just
见到
like
它，
many
就
of
是那么
us,
这个叫
whenever
做
we
是
say,
开悟，就是这个叫
see the
做是
nature of your
见
mind,
到的。
then
但实际
people
上
would
有
think
这
that
样
there
的这
is
个
something to
有外
see,
面的一个东西，就
there
是你
is
非要有
something
个好
to
像
be
比如说我
perceived, some object to be perceived. For example, my eye can see the vase, then the vase is the thing that my eyes can see. Where there is a perceiver, that's the eyes, and then the perceived, that's the vase. But the Buddha over here talked about the seeing of the nature is beyond that. By saying that, well, if there were a thing to be seen, if the nature of seeing is a thing to be seen, then you should also be able to see my seeing. This way is very similar to the Buddhist logic or Madhyamika, the Pramana teachings as well. But this is definitely wrong. Why is it wrong? Because when Ananda was talking about the seeing the nature, he perceived a little bit of it. As we talked about how he perceived the middling level of seeing the nature. The seeing of the nature, the true seeing of the nature, is much more beyond of Ananda's seeing. His seeing has not reached to the level of that of the Buddhas. Don't even mention about Aniradas or the Bodhisattvas. So the Buddha said that, well, if you were to see a thing that is called the nature of mind, then you should also be able to see the Buddha's seeing. But that's not true. And then the next one says that if you say that you see my seeing, when we both look at the same thing, then when I'm not seeing, why don't you see my not seeing? To give you an example, for example, there is something that's sitting right in between the Buddha and Ananda, a cup, let's say. The Buddha and Ananda is looking at it at the same time. Usually whenever we're looking at it through thorough analysis, if the two people are looking at it from the same place, then we would say that, yes, we see this cup all together, all at the same time. I see the cup, you see the cup, we see the cup at the same time, at the same angle even. We see exactly the same cup. But from the angle of pramana, from the Buddhist logic, in fact, they are different, because even if the two people were sitting right next to each other and looking at the same cup, the particle that formed this cup are different. Let it be the shape, the size, the direction. It can't be exactly the same. At the same time, we usually say that if we were to encounter the same person at the same time, we would say that, oh, we saw that person at the same time. But this is just a very vague concept. Whenever we go through a very thorough analysis, there is no way that we see exactly the same thing. You probably see this person from a more of an eastern angle, and I see it from more of a southern angle just because of the different location. Or whenever we look at the things from the different position, different location, my eye consciousness and your eye consciousness probably has some little subtle differences as well. Of course, that's a very thorough and detailed analysis. But over here, what the Buddha said, that is, at the same time, we see this thing, and let's call that as seeing. So you see my seeing. If you see my seeing while we're looking at the same thing, then how about when I am not looking, when I don't see, I keep my eyes closed, for example. The Buddha says, okay, I keep my eyes closed, and then the Buddha sees this flower first, and then Ananda sees this flower as well. The Buddha then asked him, now I close my eyes. If you see my seeing, then why don't you see my not seeing? Because I keep my eyes closed, I have the not seeing right now. You should be able to see my not seeing as well at the same time if you see my seeing. So at that time, either you close your eyes at the same time, or you naturally would stop seeing if I have the not seeing. Because if the seeing is something that can be objectified, and if you can see it as how I see it, then when I don't see it, when I have the not seeing, then you should also have the not seeing. Do you remember we give the example of if for a blind person, they would see a pitch black object. That is called not seeing. Then when the Buddha closed the eyes, then Ananda should naturally have the not seeing pitch black object to see as well. And then Ananda must be really confused at this point. So Ananda over here, after closed eyes, not looking at the flower, and then saying that, well, Ananda, if you see the not seeing of my, if you do see my not seeing, it is clearly not the thing that I'm not seeing. Because if you were to say that I see that you're not seeing, because these two are contradictory to each other, the not seeing and seeing. This is just like a debate in the Buddhist logic. Because over here, the seeing and not seeing, they're contradictory. So you can't really say that you see both of the characteristics of the seeing and not seeing. If you remember, a few years ago, we had a very popular poem where it says that whether you see or not seeing it, I am there. For a long period of time, people said that it was a poem from Canyang Gyatso, but apparently this is the view from Ananda. Ananda over here, if Ananda over here says that I see you're not seeing, then he will be at the fault of having contradiction. So then the Buddha said that if you do not see my not seeing, then it is clearly not a thing. Since Ananda did not see the Buddha's not seeing, then it is clearly not a thing, and how can you say it is not you? If there is not a thing on the outside, there is not an object on the outside, then how can you say it is not you? Since you did not see the Buddha's not seeing, then you should know that your seeing nature is not on the outside. That is, it would be the biggest fault if you were to think that the seeing is on the outside. Pongso Rinpoche used to teach in his instructions as well. Whenever we use mind to see mind, in fact, there is nothing to see. According to Beacon of Certainty, he also says that not seeing is the most supreme seeing. Other than that, there's really nothing to see. There's no intrinsically existent thing on the external phenomenon to be perceived. So if you do not see the not seeing, then that means your seeing is not on the outside. It is not in an object. People often say that, oh, it would be wonderful to have the blessings from the Guru, from some spiritual teacher or Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to give me blessings so that I can see the nature of my mind. But as we studied earlier, this kind of seeing the nature of your own mind should be only relied on you. You have to make that observation. While the others, the teachers or the gurus, they would point their fingers to the moon, but you are the one to look at the moon. All the teachings, all the guidance that's given to you, they're simply the skillful means for you to see the nature of the mind. But if you were to take those tools of guiding you or pointing to the nature of your mind as the real nature of the mind, that is definitely not appropriate. That is not right. So this is the analysis of seeing and not seeing. Do you understand now?
然后还有一个就是再有啊，就是有则呢就是
And then the Buddha said, what is more, if your seeing is a thing, things should also see you when you see things. With substance and nature mixed up together, you and I and everyone in the world are no longer in order. This is very much or exactly the analysis of the pramana. When I look into the Master Changshui and Master Oyi and all these great masters' commentary, it's very clear, though the language is a bit difficult to understand. But their logic is very fitting to the actual sutra. Throughout the whole analysis, the whole logical analysis, they would come to the conclusion that there is no object to be seen. If there is an object to be seen, then it would be faulty. In the Madhyamika teachings, we also talk about whatever things there is, whatever things they are, as long as you think there is something that is truly existent, then that is faulty. So over here it says that if your seeing is a thing, if you see the scenery, mountains and rivers, at that time, if you see those things and think that those are the seeing nature, meaning that the nature is not just outside, not just within you, but it's also outside, then the external phenomena also see you. What does it mean? I think the best way of explaining this is by the Longchenpa's teachings. According to the seven treasuries, for example, Longchenpa stated that if the mountain started to have a wildfire in the mountains, and then by perceiving that the mountains are also the nature of your mind, then your mind should also be on fire. This is the analysis. So that's one of the faults that's associated with seeing the external object as part of your nature. Whatever you see, if you think that your seeing nature is on the outside, then your seeing nature should also see you, which means that a person would have two mind streams. That's the fault. In another word, it is that if someone to claim that the perceived can also perceive, so whatever you can perceive, they're the objects, but this kind of object that are perceived can also perceive. In this way, you're saying that the whole animate and inanimate world would be very much entangled. But in our world, in fact, the object and the perceiver are very much distinct. Our mind perceives the object, the animate world and the inanimate world are very much distinct. For example, if we see a pillar, when at the time of seeing this pillar, if you claim that this pillar is my seeing nature, the pillar is outside. Since it is my seeing nature, then the seeing nature could also see you. In this way, the whole world's conventional names or conventional appearances would all get entangled and completely chaotic. So what should you do then? Over here it says that whenever you see the nature, all you need to do is just slightly observe your mind, slightly look inward, and then you will recognize that the mind is simply luminous, unconditioned. It is beyond the apprehending and apprehended. By people who can understand that, then they would taste it just as how a mute tastes the sugar. They cannot express it from their language or concept or their conceptual mind. And then the Buddha said that, Ananda, if when you see, it is you and not I who see, then the seeing nature pervades everywhere. Therefore, whose is it if it is not yours? Whenever you see the nature of your mind, it is not seeing me or anything on the outside, because this nature is all pervasive. Since this seeing nature pervades everywhere, therefore whose is it if it's not yours? The seeing nature is not narrow, it is not conditioned, it is not temporary, it is all pervasive. Whenever we talk about the qualities of the Buddha, we use these words such as constant, pervasive, and spontaneity. These three great qualities, that's the true seeing nature. This is the quality that describes it. Why do you have doubts about your own nature, your own true nature, and come to see me seeking verification, thinking your nature is not true? So the Buddha is asking, well, when you see your nature, why do you still have doubts? Why do you still want to get my confirmation, my verification? Why do you still use those language to seek for those confirmation from me? Because those words and language, they're simply a temporary tool. Just after crossing the river, you don't need the boat anymore. Therefore, all you need to do is to look into your mind, look inwardly and see your mind, to see your true nature. Don't keep asking me these kinds of questions. Just as there are people over here who don't engage in their personal practice to develop their own insights, rather they would keep on asking questions after questions. What's the point of that then, if you don't engage in actual practice? Of course, on one hand, it's your actual meditation, your actual practice. Another is that another really important thing in your spiritual path is supplication. You have to supplicate to the Guru and the Three Jewels, making the sincere aspiration of attaining enlightenment. Therefore, before each of your practice sessions, it's crucial to practice the Guru Yoga. And then, after the Guru Yoga, you can start meditation, you can start your practice. This is quite important. On top of that, we need to pay attention to the previous chanting and then the post-chanting as well, such as our pre-class chanting and the post-class chanting, such as the aspiration of Samadabhadra. This is such an important aspiration to make every day. I understand nowadays we have class every day, and it's probably quite stressful for you to attend class every day. However, I think for mundane beings, we need this stress, we need this kind of pressure. Otherwise, we would slack off very easily. By attending class over here, even if you can't do anything else, the most important is to chant the aspiration of Samadabhadra all together with such a large Sangha, with this Sangha that's full of noble ones. Then the merit is incredible, it is unfathomable. All the way from the beginning, if you can chant from the Sambara all the way till the end, this is a complete system. This is the majority of my daily practice, my daily chants. Because look at our chanting, we have the eight auspiciousness, we have the Wangdu, and we have the sadhana of Shakyamuni Buddha, and confession liturgy, as well as making offering to the Buddha, the seven branch offering, and the practice of dispelling obscurations, and we have mantras, so on and so forth. Later, when we have the class on the wish-fulfilling treasury, I think it's quite important to add the confession liturgy and the protector's chanting. Initially, I felt that the beginning part of the wish-fulfilling treasury is mainly on the teachings of the common vehicle. I thought it should be okay, but still, the 7 treasuries are guarded by the 3 protectors. The ocean-like protectors guarding the 7 treasuries. It's crucial for us to be very careful with our samaya vows, such as get along with your fellow Sangha members and practice the sacred outlook, which is really, really important. Majority of other teachers don't really want to give the teachings of the 7 treasuries just because they don't want to, first of all, they don't want to give teachings to inappropriate vessel, and second of all, they don't want to get punishments from the protectors. So people with great wisdom, on one hand, to protect themselves, and on the other, protect the great Sangha, which try their very best to protect the teachings, such as wish-fulfilling treasury. But I think this time we didn't really pay much attention. Therefore, we have to add the confession liturgy into the chanting before and after class in the wish-fulfilling treasury. Whenever we study the Vajrayana teachings, I usually would ask people to practice the 100,000 times of Vajrasattva. So this time, I would ask you to chant at least 10,000 times of Vajrasattva mantra within the 2 days, and then try your best to finish the 100,000 times as soon as possible. We have to practice confession together, otherwise I feel this is not very good in general from my observation. We will try to bring about great benefits within each of our classes. In some sense, all of you who are here, you're like the survivors after a war, though that we don't have a war here, but from certain aspects, after encountering all kinds of obstacles, the obstacles of inner, outer, and sacred obstacles, these of you who are sitting here, you survived. So by receiving this teaching, we should have this mind that truly cherish the teaching. The profound teachings, including Surangama Sutra, because Surangama Sutra, by uniting the teaching with Sutra Yana and Vajrayana, it is indeed a teaching of pointing out the nature of mind. So let it be the study of Surangama Sutra or the mantra of Surangama. It is said that by doing so, it shakes the foundation of the Mara's palace because it is such a profound teaching. So while we're studying it, let it be for each of us or as a group. There could be some small obstacles, but let's study and let's study this teaching with a strong mind, with perseverance, and let's study it with the view of emptiness to complete this teaching of Mahayana. It's really not that easy to give teachings of the Dharma. I'm not even talking about a long text, a long sutra, a very important sutra. I'm talking about even some simple teachings of Dharma are very difficult to be propagated nowadays. Many things are very difficult nowadays, but I think we should try our best. Even if at the end, if it doesn't complete as we wished for, but at least we tried our best. In this samsara, it doesn't go any better nor any worse. But on the other hand, we're planting such a precious seed on our alaya, and it is quite precious. We should receive the Surangama Sutra like this.